Welcome back to our series on Romans. This is an exciting portion of the book of Romans here. Chapter 6, verses 1 through 17. Sin's power is broken. Chapter 6, verse 13, a believer's tool. Verse 13 says, do not offer the parts of your body to sin as instruments of wickedness, but rather offer yourselves to God as those who have been brought from death to life, and offer the parts of your body to Him as instruments of righteousness. Our bodies are tools to be used to do what is right. The text says instruments of righteousness. As believers, we need to choose to use our bodies as instruments of righteousness, to do with our bodies whatever would promote personal engagement with God and help others engage with God. And as believers, we need to use our bodies in a way that rejects returning to the old sinful nature. Our body is our tool, and we can use it to connect with Jesus, or we can use it to reject God and go our own ways. Please don't use your lifestyle, your body, the things that you can do to reject God. Please use what's at your disposal. Please use your body, your talents, your lifestyle as an instrument that would move you closer into relationship with Jesus. Here are some tips on how to exterminate personal sin. Exterminate personal sin. Let's look what the text says. The text says, do not offer. So first of all, identify personal weaknesses. What you're weak to, I'm not weak to. Well, I might be, but chances are I'm not. What I'm weak to, you're not weak to. Well, you might be, but chances are probably not. You and I are weak to different things. What we need to do is take ownership. God knows who we are. We need to know who we are. Take ownership over those areas that we find ourselves weak to. Secondly, recognize temptations. Don't just blot them out of your memory. Don't just ignore them. Recognize them and saying, okay, I'm weak in this area, and yes, I see that this is absolutely a temptation my way. Target identified, temptation coming my way. Thirdly, confront sinful desires. Don't let them fester. And I do this sometimes, and I'm sorry. I'm just a guy. Just like you're a person, I'm just a person, and I need to reject this just like you do. We can't let these temptations fester. We need to be confrontational. We need to be head-butting. As much as I can be grumpy with some people, I need to be grumpy with those temptations that come inside my life. Like you can be grumpy with some people. Like you can be confrontational with people. You need to be confrontational about that stuff in there, and not just let it fester, not just let it boil until it comes out. We need to confront that stuff. Fourthly, stay away from known sources of temptation. If you're an alcoholic, you know going to the bar is probably a really bad thing for you to do. If you have been into pornography or are into pornography, you know it's a really bad idea to get on that computer after your wife is asleep, to get on that computer when no one else can see you. You know that. Whatever your temptation happens to be, you know that putting yourself into certain scenarios really is just a setup for failure. You need to protect yourself and not expose yourself to those areas where you're going to be seen to be weak. Practice self-restraint. This is a tough one, This is a tough one. This is kind of why the law didn't fail. But this is kind of why we failed the law, because we're not do-gooders. We don't keep the rules. We absolutely need to work at this. This is something that we can grow a muscle for. This is something that can be developed in us. We need to practice self-restraint. It does not come easy to us. We are fallen. Yes, we've died with Jesus and risen to life, but we're still battling the sinful nature inside of us, which has been defeated in us. But we're still like, no, I'm not going to live up to those compulsions anymore. I'm going to live for Jesus. We got to battle that, and that's practice. We need to practice self-restraint, and it's something that we can grow in. Listen, you're not defeated. You do not lack victory. You are not pressured into being something that you don't want to be because you're a believer. You can develop self-restraint. And yeah, you may have some ties to your old life. Yes, there may be some things in your old life weighing you down. But I need you to know, I want you to know the truth of God's word, that when Jesus rose again, He gained the victory over death, and you have the victory over death because of Him. Yeah, you may have a truckload of monstrously bad things in your past. That does not dictate what you will be and who you will be in the future. Get yourself right with Jesus. Get some friends to help you, because we all need friends to help us. ourselves and practice self-restraint because we have the victory in Jesus. We can move forward into a life of freedom. We can let go of all of that stuff that's weighing us down in our past. So practice self-restraint. Get some friends around you if you need to help. You can do this. You are a victor in Jesus already. Sixthly, consciously invest time in good habits and service. It makes sense that if you're trying to avoid negative behavior, you need to start doing positive behavior. If I am just sitting on my couch and I've not chosen to do anything at all, naturally I'm going to fall back into my bad habits. I need to be intentional about this. This is behavioral change. I need to modify my behavior by no longer doing what I'm doing, but no, don't just say, I can't do this. I need to start doing things that are positive. I need to start doing things that are leading me into a closer relationship with God, into personal engagement with God. So replace that do not stuff. Replace that negative stuff we're trying to get away from with positive things. Seventhly, depend on grace. I'm serious. Please don't beat yourself up. You are going to fail sometimes. If you haven't yet, it's coming. You are still going to fail. You are still going to mess up. You are still going to make a blunder, make a fool of yourself. Depend on grace. We keep short accounts with God. We get back up on our feet. After we've said, I'm sorry, humbly humble ourselves before God, we get back on our feet because God lifts us back on our feet. That's why we're standing. It's on grace that we stand. God puts us back on our feet. Rely on grace. Just because you fail once, twice, don't let that stop you. Don't let that stop you from moving forward. Receive the victory that you have in Jesus. Begin to live that Jesus life and pursue excellence and friendship with Jesus and personal engagement with God. Don't be weighted down and held down by what you've done or the mistakes that you're currently making. Get back up. Rely on grace because God's got a truckload of grace. You may have a truckload of failure. God's got a dump truckload of grace for you to get you back on your feet, so rely on grace. Finally, let the peace of Christ rule in your heart. Please don't doubt your Christianity. Please don't doubt God's love for you. No, we will never be great at this. We will get better and better as time goes on. We will. You trust me, that will happen. If you're a new believer, you're going to get better and better at your walk with God as time goes on. And one day we're going to be in the presence of Jesus. Just let the peace of Christ settle in you. Let the peace of the Holy Spirit just settle in you, knowing that this isn't about performance. There's no reason for a believer to have performance anxiety within their relationship with Jesus because we're not called to jump through hoops. We're not called to learn tricks. We're called into a friendship with Jesus. Just relax in that friendship. And Jesus is all about peace. Let him be your peace giver. Chapter 6, verse 14, law and grace. Law and grace. Verse 14 says, "For sin shall not be your master, because you are not under law, but under grace." I think we need to look at a definition for not under law. Let's clear this up. What does it mean not under law? Here's a definition. Christians are freed from the condemnation and penalties God's law required. Instead, they are judged according to the gracious intervention of Jesus. Also, apart from grace, people can only try to meet God's expectations by their own effort. But grace empowers believers to live up to what God desires. Here's what it means to no longer be under the law. The text says you are not under the law. First of all, we are not under the law's demands, as were the people of the Old Testament. Second, we are not under the curse implied by the impossible standard of the law. You can look at Galatians 3, 10 to 12 if you'd like more information about that. Thirdly, we are not under its system of requirements. The ceremonial laws had to be meticulously kept. We don't have to do that anymore. Fourthly, we are not under the fear of failing the just standard of the law. Where the law left no room for failure, highlighting that we were on a path to death. Grace is our path to God. The text says, but under grace. It's because of God's grace that we have freedom from sin. It's because of God's grace that we have freedom from law. We still can't live up to the 10 Commandments. As believers, we still can't live up to the 10 Commandments. But it's because of God's grace that we stand. It's because of God's grace that we have a relationship with Him. Let's look at the summary for this first section of Romans chapter 6 here. Here's the summary. Water baptism is a wonderful picture that expresses a spiritual reality. Believers have been freed from sin by uniting themselves with Jesus' death and resurrection. Because we have died with Jesus, we have a new option available to us. We can now choose to please God rather than slavishly following our sinful desires. Having died with Jesus, we have been released from sin's mastery over us. Although we can still sin, we now have a choice where we had none before faith in Jesus. Our choice should be to reject our old slave ways and to please God. It is important for us to consider ourselves as having died with Christ, because dead people cannot respond to temptation. We need to exercise our freedom by using our bodies in ways that please God. Part of what it means to please God and to live free is to intentionally die to our old self day by day. It is because of God's grace that we have this freedom available to us. Thanks for hanging in there in the first section of chapter 6 here. I've got some requests, and you're expecting them. You know what I'm going to request. First of all, I'm going to request you to share the love. It means a lot to me. It really helps. When you share these videos, share these links on your Facebook, or when you tweet them, put them on Google Plus if you still do that, pin it, whatever it is you do, it really, really does help. This personal engagement and helping busy people to connect with Jesus, which is what I'm all about. I'm trying to empower people to connect with Jesus while they're busy. It really, really helps. So please share the love. Second of all, would you please leave a comment? At least consider leaving a comment. And I'm asking you to do this inductive style. Observation, interpretation, application. So what did you hear in the text? Observation. What did you hear God specifically saying to you as you were going through chapter 6? Interpretation. What do you think that means? What does that mean to you? And then application. Now that you've heard from God and you've got it figured out, this is, I think, what it means. What do you have to do about it? What's the application? Would you please leave a comment? God bless you. See you next time.